Rich is our guest presenter today with Mind Masters, and she's going to be walking us through your slight edge. So, Barbara, welcome, and I'll just hand you the tools and you can go for it.
Thank you, Deb. Well, it's interesting. I titled this The Slight Edge because years ago, the company that I worked with, that was their philosophy. And then recently I found a book by Jeff Olson that was called The Slight Edge. And it really it speaks to me with respect to how we can plan and how we can, really make an impact on what we do on a daily, weekly basis with our businesses. The Slight Edge is simply a philosophy. And interestingly enough, it's I will say it's the process of simple, positive actions that you repeat over time. And of course, you have to have faith that the miracles will happen. But you have to know and you have to trust the process to keep it going. Um, it's an interesting concept because it's a missing ingredient. Most people don't like taking small steps because everybody wants it yesterday. But if you've been, you know, reading books and CDs and going to seminars and listening to webinars like this, you really ought to recognize the fact that nothing's going to change for you unless you do take those small steps. And that's what will give you the slight edge. Um, so if you do all the tiny things that appear to be trivial, they will have tremendous impact over time consistently. And that's really why most people don't do it, is because it seems trivial, but they become seeds for you. And I think this is the most important part of what we do when we decide to plan. Planning, I think, is one of the most key aspects of running a business. And, as a speaker, I think you have to recognize that even planning your talk to whoever you're going to give that to is just as important. So you have to form these habits. And so I want to talk about how to integrate the slight edge into your planning process. So remember, the slight edge is about awareness. It's about making the right choices, those small steps that are going to make a difference. I always like to start the planning process by really looking at setting goals. And I'm talking about the personal goals, the things that are of major importance to you, and they have an advantage to you because they're worthwhile. And so they have to reflect your innermost dreams and goals. They have to be reasonable so that you can see results, and they have to have meaning to you because, as we go down the road and do those small steps, sometimes the believability in the accomplishment wanes a bit. So the more meaning you can put into the goals, the more motivation you'll be able to recognize and have the possibilities that are before you. There are different kinds of goals, and I want you to understand that there are outcome goals. If you set an intention to reach a milestone, like a certain amount of money per year, or perhaps a weight goal, these make you push yourself. However, they sometimes look like all or nothing goals. That's an interesting concept, all or nothing. If you don't lose the weight, you feel less successful. But that's part of, understanding the difference between some of those goals that we set. There's also performance goals, and they focus on tracking the effort and the actions that go into a major accomplishment. And that's precisely why I really strongly recommend to my clients that we do quarterly planning, because that way you can do the tracking on a quarterly basis and make any adjustments you need to make. And then there's process goals. And I see process goals more from the standpoint of the results that you have to stay focused to for your business. The goals in overall are in all areas of your life. But when it comes down to the business, I like to see those results because that helps you stay focused to those things that will get you to the other goals that you want. So the key to effective goal setting then is to define your goals. And you can't create a plan without a clear description of what it is that you want. And I know we've all heard the SMART, the acronym SMART for goals, this being specific, who, what, where, when, which, why, and to make them measurable. So you need time frames, you need amounts, or you need units. Essentially anything that will show progress. They have to be attainable, but here's an interesting point. They need to stretch you. You have to have the challenges and the obstacles because that's where the growth is. It's really what happens in between the beginning and the end that makes a difference. So that's where the challenges come from. Relevant just simply means that the goal is in harmony with everything else that's important in your life. So to set some goals that are outside of the ones that perhaps that agree with your family, where money is concerned, let's say, that could be an interesting thing to really step back and understand. And also, it has to be relevant to your own personal purpose. I think that's something that oftentimes we overlook when we're moving forward. I believe we also have to have a time frame. The T on SMART says timely, and that means a definite time frame for their accomplishment. I learned years ago that the goal may stay, you may stay focused to the goal, but it may be the time frame that you have to adjust. Sometimes simply because there's either a learning curve, there's some things that are out of your control. Let's say if you have somebody working on something for you and they're not moving ahead as quickly, that may have to adjust your time frame. So that is to me the basis for looking at goals, because they will, in this case, have the commitment. When you have the commitment to the goals, then the goals will allow the motivation for taking action and give you a sense of fulfillment and provide you with that experience of winning. Those are the things that really come together when you're talking about planning and of course, goal setting. I want to move you into, obviously we're talking about business plans here. It's really, really important that we understand what it's going to take to move us forward. There's things called the business plan, which is huge, and I would like to believe you all have a definite business plan that you work from. But we're talking about more of a quarterly action plan, and that's really what I like to focus on, so that you can really make a commitment to what you're going to need. I put up the screen with the Wheel of Life, just making sure that you had an understanding of what the other areas of your goal setting needs to encompass. But of course, we're looking at the bottom, the financial and career area that I think is the most important area. I mentioned purpose before, and there was a book written a couple of years ago about finding your why, and really understanding that why is, to me, the purpose of what it is that you do. It's not what you do, and it's not how you do it, because people, as the slide says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So it's that excitement and enthusiasm and what you give to what you do that makes a difference. So that comes into play as you start doing your planning. Where do you start? You start by knowing where you are at any given moment. And I think the planning process is absolutely essential at asking the questions. It's one of the most important areas of doing the planning. It's called strategic questioning. And, what are the things in your business that you know you need to do but didn't get around to? What about in your marketing and sales? Are there any areas that stand out needing improvement? These are the questions that you need to answer, as well as what was the quarterly income goal? What was the result of that quarterly income goal? And where are you in relation to your financial goal for the year? So situation analysis takes you, into a time to review all aspects of the business. And when I say all aspects, I don't want to get too huge here, but let's think about the management of it. That's, that can be just the daily management, the way you answer the phone, but how you work with strategic alliances, how you work with maybe virtual assistants, or if you have an on-site person. Those things are very important to make sure you have the systems in place for. There's also marketing and sales, having the tools that you need in this day and age to move forward. There's always going to be things that are barriers for us, but we need to see where the competition is and how you're going to work past where you are at any one moment. There's a financial area, again, and going back to the question I asked earlier, what was your quarterly income goal, and are you on target for it? That's particularly where you want to look. It may be looking at how you're going to have to adjust your budget. That's the last area that I don't think a lot of people pay attention to, but I really feel strongly about it. It's called the leadership area. Now, if you have people that work for you or that you work with, then it's how are you supporting them to grow. If you don't, then it's also what are you doing to grow yourself. Because as I mentioned earlier about the Slight Edge, you can listen to the books, I read the books, you can listen to the webinars and things, but if you're not doing something with it to enhance your own growth, that oftentimes is the stumbling block for really accomplishing what you say is important to you to accomplish. So strategic analysis is an important aspect, and I challenge you to take time quarterly to do that. That's one of the big areas that we make sure people do in Mind Masters. Then, of course, when you've gone through all the where am I right now, you really want to look at what specific results and identify them. And this is like goals. They need to be specific and measurable and have time frames. But you also have to ask the question, what do I want to do? What do I want to have? What do I or the business need to become in order to grow it? And so the results focus on outcomes, not activity. So oftentimes I've heard people, talk about, writing a script for something, and that's not the end result that you want. The script for your LinkedIn site or your Facebook site is really how many people do you want to connect with you, or how many people do you want to have following you. Those are the specifics. Those are the outcomes. You still have to do the writing, but you really want results to come from it. So what do you want to have the business do, have, and become? That's an essential aspect to really come through with. I can't stress it enough. That's how you then start to create your quarterly action plan. It's the final part. You have to focus on implementation, and this is where those small steps come in. Action is the only way that you're going to accomplish what you say is important to you. And so detailing out the results and what is it, that needs to get done, and who's going to do it. So you want to spend time on the detail of it. I find it very important to focus only on, at most, 5 specific areas during a quarter that are important to have happen. So if you take each of those 5 results and break them down into a quarterly action plan, then you can set the time frames for it. Then you can really see what needs to be done, and perhaps then decide who's going to help you do it. This part, I oftentimes have said, is the most tedious part. People want to see things happen yesterday, but again, it is the small steps and your awareness of those small steps that are going to get you to the end result of what you say is important to you. So there are some rules. Obviously, you've got to make the commitment. You've got to throw your hat in the ring, make the commitment to what it is you say is important to you. But it also takes belief. Belief that the kinds of speaking engagements that you want are out there for you, so that it will reinforce or enforce you to do the things and take the steps that are necessary to get you there. You have to do what needs to be done. That's where the action steps come in. It says persevere until the end. That means not giving up. Remember, the small steps are a long-term process. It is not about it happening at the end of the quarter. It's a matter of being, and the word I haven't used before is consistency. It's the consistency of those small steps that will actually bring you to the end result of what you want. No excuses? Well, the only person you can make excuses to is yourself. So I challenge you on that score to push yourself a little further and raise the stakes a little bit by taking, it says here, intelligent risks. Now, one of the big keys that I think is important in this whole process is number 10, is to celebrate. Celebrate the small steps. Celebrate the weekly progress that you've made. That's the emotional part of what needs to be into your plan that is going to carry you through. That's going to keep you growing with it and not leaving you off in some other place in the end. So what does celebrate mean? It means perhaps writing down the achievements, the accomplishments, the victories that you feel good about. Know what those are. Do it daily. Do it weekly. I'll tell you. The first time I did that, I was looking at a job career change years ago, and the man that I was working with had me go all the way back to kindergarten and start looking at what things I really felt good about. And I'll tell you, it made such a difference in first off, how I even saw myself, but how it then said to me, wow, if I did those things back then, certainly I can take these new steps and move myself forward from there. So it really is an interesting area to examine and not run away from, because at times when you're not feeling like you're making the progress you want to make, that's the time to go back and reread your list of achievements and accomplishments and say, darn, if I did that, I know I can take these next steps. So I can take those intelligent risks and move on. So, it all takes the small steps, like showing up. I don't know how you're marketing yourself, but if it's online, then you got to show up online. If it's in person, then you've got to do that networking that we all talk about. But it comes down to the consistency in which you do it all, and knowing what that consistency is for you. It means keeping your attitude up. It means all of those things so that the focus is on the right things for you, and having that commitment for a long period of time. Again, the small steps take time, and it's one of those things that requires, I guess, not only commitment but perseverance, because you have to have faith in the end result. It's called, I remember a man from Success Motivation Institute, he used to call it a burning desire. Having that burning desire to accomplish what you say is so important to you. And then being able to pay the price, being willing to pay the price for the risks that you take, for the aspects that you have to be in charge of. Most importantly, and I say this, is to practice the slight edge integrity. You see, it does take integrity to take those small steps and be consistent and know that that's what you're doing, because no one's watching you. And so it can be difficult, but it's really the crux of being in integrity with yourself, being in integrity with the purpose that you say is important to you, and recognizing that you can't change where you are overnight, but you can change your direction to where you're headed overnight, and it takes the small steps. So I want to be able to share with you that, of course, we do a quarterly planning session. I take you more in depth through some of these steps, and we do invite you to join us. I just want to give you a quote from the gentleman that wrote the book, The Slight Edge. He says, "Being productive and being busy are not necessarily the same thing. Doing things won't create your success. Doing the right things will." And so I really challenge you to look at what those are, because it all comes down to one thing. It comes down to your own personal development. And I know that in order to be able to share some of the wonderful things that you do in speaking, that's an area that you have to be able to show to your audiences. So that's my pitch for you taking time to recognize where you are, where you want to go, and shifting and doing those things a little bit differently this quarter, so that you're moving in the direction that you want to move in. I always like to say, make it a very profitable time. And of course, everyone can make it $1 million day. You have the power to do it. It is in your thinking. This is Barbara Eldridge.